What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. All right, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to talk to you about once again today with this pretty big snowstorm that's going to be impacting much of the Midwest, moving into the Mid-Atlantic and the Upper South, and then potentially moving up to the Northeast. And we have some updates for you in regards to all of that as we are looking at potential hazards and potential impacts for that. We have winter storm watches and winter storm warnings being issued for parts of the Midwest to start off with, and we'll go ahead and dive right into that all right about now. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and show you the Storms United code map that we have pulled up. Shout out to John from Storms United, our head admin, who made this for us using AWIPS and a few other programs that we like to use. Now, I want to preface before I talk about this a little bit that some of this does need to be updated. For example, the code orange in the south needs to be updated. That needs to be downgraded since the severe weather threat is over. And the code yellow hatch needs to be upgraded to potentially a code orange hatch because of the recent developments that are going on over there. But by and large, this is generally what we have. We are still maintaining the code red for parts of Kentucky, West Virginia, and Virginia because of the flash flooding and the code orange surrounding that. And we have a code yellow in effect for much of the eastern United States and the Midwest because of the snowstorm and the backside of it moving through. So we're maintaining that. And we have a code orange for the exact same reason up in New York. And we have a code yellow for parts of the mountainous regions over here because the upcoming snowstorm, which we are going to go ahead and discuss right about now. So mid-range runs have started to continue to come out, and we're getting a better picture as to what's going on. And ultimately, this is going to be a very interesting setup. I will tell you this right here. And I wanted to go ahead and start off with kind of looking at the setup and kind of doing that first before looking at the warnings, mainly because I want to show you what we're potentially looking at and what the NWS is looking at as well. Let me go ahead and move my camera over here, and then we'll go ahead and zoom in on this in editing. Here we go. So ultimately, here's what we have going on. Pay attention to what's going on in the northwestern United States right here. Pay attention to that because here's how the system is going to start off as at first. It's a 3-in-1 type of system, I've noticed. It's going to start off as an Alberta Clipper system that's going to be moving through real quickly into the United States, and then you start to see another low developing off the lee of the Colorado Rockies over here. That's going to allow it to morph into your more classic Colorado low as a lot of the snow moves into the Great Plains, into the United States. And then you have this low-pressure system diving further to the south, which will allow for heavier snow and more moisture from the Gulf of America. I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. I've been seeing the comments about it saying, "Oh, it's Gulf of America. Oh, it's Gulf of Mexico. Gulf of Mexico." I'm going to use the both interchangeably just to please everybody. I don't care which one it is. If you have a problem with it, let me know in the comments. I'm going to use them interchangeably just because there's a lot of confusion around that with the new administration and all that stuff. I'm just going to use those interchangeably if that's okay with you guys. So with that being said, here's what we have going on. No, I'm just going to go ahead and call it the Gulf from now on. So it's going to enter, it's going to start bringing in moisture from the Gulf over here. And then you have another low-pressure system starting to organize and develop near the Gulf Coast right here. And then it's going to really start to ramp up that snow and that rain and all that stuff. And it's going to bring a lot more moisture from the Gulf, from the southwestern Atlantic Ocean. And then it's going to start bringing some major impacts to the northeastern United States over here. But my main concern for right now is the Midwest because of how powerful this is going to be and the potential snowfall that's going to develop with this. So here's the situation that we have right now. We have winter storm warnings in effect for parts of southeastern Missouri and parts of Kansas, including Springfield, Joplin, Lebanon, Osage Beach, and Rolla. Let's go ahead and quickly pull this up for you right here. Winter storm warning in effect right here. You guys can, I'm going to move this over so you guys can see it. Here's what we have going on. A winter storm warning in effect from midnight Monday night into 6 a.m. Wednesday. What? Heavy snow expected. Total snow accumulations between 6 and 10 inches for most of the area, with locally higher amounts up to 14 inches in a few local locations where snow bands develop. And keep in mind, they're also taking into account the Ozark Plateau as well, since that's a higher area of elevation. Those areas are definitely going to see more snowfall than, say, areas further a bit to the north of that. I would say This is for portions of southeast Kansas and Missouri. Impacts. Visibilities may drop below a quarter of a mile due to falling and blowing snow. Travel could be very difficult to impossible. If you are in this warning and this snowstorm hits, do not travel unless it is an absolute emergency. I cannot stress that enough for you guys. Winds may gust up to 20 to 30 miles per hour, especially along the I-49 corridor, leading to blowing and drifting snow. Now, I'm sure some of you are wondering, why haven't they issued a blizzard watch or a blizzard warning just yet? This is why. We're looking at wind gusts of 20 to 30 miles per hour, and yes, the visibility is going to be below a quarter of a mile due to the falling snow, but the wind speeds are not up to 35 miles per hour or greater, and for a period of at least 3 hours, so that's why you're not getting your blizzard watches or your blizzard warnings from this just yet. Could change. The pressure gradient could definitely be tighter. We're not 100% sure. Nothing is set in stone just yet, but I figured I'd elaborate on that very quickly. And we also have winter storm watches in effect for parts of St. Louis as well. Let's go ahead and pull this up for you. This is in effect from late Monday night through Tuesday night. Between 5 and 10 inches of snow possible for this. They're going a bit on the higher end, I would say, as well, especially as these new runs continue to come in for portions of southern Illinois and southeast central Missouri. Travel could be very difficult to impossible. The hazardous conditions could impact the Tuesday morning and evening commutes. Do not travel if you're going to get impacted by this system. I would strongly advise against it. And they haven't, also, just to clarify as well, they haven't issued winter storm watches or warnings for parts east of that because there's still a little bit of uncertainty as to what's going to be happening and how this system's going to evolve. But regardless, what I can tell you for certain is the following is going to pretty much happen. How this snow is going to start, and part of the reason we're going to see such high accumulations is because it's going to start off as a very dry and powdery snow, as it's kind of in its Alberta Clipper form, I would say. And ultimately, what you're going to get from that is, after a period of time, you're going to start seeing more and more and more wet snow compared to what we were seeing before. It's going to start off as a very dry snow, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see rain to snowfall ratios of maybe approaching like 20 to 1. I would say like 18 to 1 would be the realistic max in this. But as time goes on and as that Colorado low starts to develop and starts to take shape, you're going to see those rain-snow ratios dip a little bit. You're still going to get a lot of snow, don't get me wrong, but you're adding more precipitable water into it, so that snow is going to be a bit more moist, maybe down to the Kuchera range, I would say, which is on average in this part of the Midwest, about 12 to 13 to 1. Those are your ratios right there. Not great for snowballs, I will tell you that right now, but it's pretty decent for sledding, so I hope you guys enjoy that. And then as it approaches the Mid-Atlantic region and starts to tap more into the moisture from the Gulf and the southwestern United States, not the U.S., but southwestern Atlantic Ocean, you're going to see those ratios drop even further. Maybe I'd say about 8 to 1, and depending on where you are at and depending on where that rain-snow line develops, maybe as low as like 6 or 7 to 1, depending on where you are if you're in D.C., Philly, New York, Boston, those areas, so we're going to have to pay very close attention to that as well. But with that being said, that's generally what the NAM is going for with what we're seeing right here. This is kind of a general gist as to what we're potentially going to be seeing with this. And what I do find interesting, at least with the NAM, is they're actually having 2 low-pressure systems, kind of with this system, one further to the north and one further to the south. The more dominant low-pressure system is easily going to be the one further to the south right here. And if we continue to see that combination right here where there's a low-pressure system over here and a low-pressure system over here, what that ultimately might do is drive the snow more to the north, which could ultimately make things a little hairy for the rain-snow line if you're in the Delmarva Peninsula, southern Maryland, southern Virginia. But it would also put more of New York and New England in the line of fire for this, so we'll have to pay attention and see how the system evolves. But by and large, it's ultimately it's going to be a pretty powerful and a pretty strong storm. And here's what we have with the NAM's accumulations for parts of the Midwest. I want to go ahead and show you this just to show you that this is not the GFS. This is the NAM. The NAM wants 20-plus inches of snow for areas south of St. Louis and areas north of the Ozark Plateau. And in areas around Springfield, you're looking at around 12 to 16 inches of snow. This is not the GFS, and this is not the European. This is a mid-range model calling for this large amount of snow right here. And this does go 60 hours out, so we can't show you the NAM nest, unfortunately. We'll be able to show you that tomorrow. But ultimately, we're seeing more and more of these runs calling for these very, very large snow accumulations right here. And if it was just the European GFS going this with this haywire crazy situation, I would be a bit more skeptical with the snow totals. But now that the NAM is starting to act up, and the HER and the RAP, based on their initialization, is showing a similar setup, so at least synoptically, I am raising alarm bells with this right here, and this right here is why. Let's go ahead and kind of move on to more the long-term runs, just to kind of give you a general gist as to what's going on, because there have been some shifts more so to the southeast compared to what we were seeing previously. Here's what we have with the GEM GDPS. The GEM GDPS wants the system to stay out to sea and bring a lot of North Carolina and Virginia a lot of snow. And I'll go ahead and show you the snow accumulations. They want areas in northeast North Carolina to get 20 inches of snow. I'm going to be honest, I find that hard to believe, mainly because of where this system is approaching and how powerful these bands are. It's calling for a lot of snow, but in a very isolated, small area south around Virginia Beach. And I'm having a hard time believing that per se. I also have issues with some of the initialization. The GEM GDPS is also notorious for bringing much colder temperatures than the other runs and not being accurate with those. So I'm having a hard time kind of believing that type of scenario right there. But I will go ahead and show you the GFS, which I will say is a bit more of a realistic scenario. After it exits the Midwest, it moves quickly into Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and then it starts to move into into the sea, into the Atlantic, and become a nor'easter. But it mainly stays off to sea, and it's not as close to the coast as what we've seen other runs typically do. Like, for example, the NAM, if that trajectory kept going, it'd be much closer to the coast and put more of New York and parts of New England in the line of fire for even more snow, for example. But by and large, the GFS is a bit more of a realistic model, and it has shifted the biggest snow more to the southeast. But that also means you're going to put more of Delaware, New Jersey, New York City, Boston in the line of fire as well. Philadelphia might maybe be off the hook a little bit if this were to verify, but other areas like in New Jersey, which don't typically see this huge amount of snowfall, could get even worse impacts from this. So we're going to have to pay attention to it and see how this ultimately pans out. Let's go ahead and show you total snow accumulation possibilities. We already showed you the GEM GDPS. Euro has been pretty interesting with this as well, to say this at the very least. Here's the 6Z Euro. Here's the 0Z. The 0Z went pretty haywire, I will tell you this right here. Before you ask, no, I don't have access to the 12Z European run right now. I'm sorry. I know it's not exactly the most updated by the time I'm recording this. However, that's not out yet, so I can't really extrapolate any runs based off this. But here's what the European wants to happen. The European wants much of North Carolina, much of Virginia, much of Maryland, much of Delaware, New Jersey, New York City to get in the line of fire for this. That is interesting. And they're also calling for 20 plus inches of snow in areas like around Richmond, for example, and areas south of the Potomac River and south of Maryland, south of DC, which still gets a foot of snow from this. I'm going to be honest, that seems a little excessive, but at the same time, it does seem realistic considering that the NWS in Washington, D.C. has been watching this, and they've been tagging this as a potentially very big impact type of storm. Confidence isn't quite there just yet, but the models are agreeing that something is going to happen, and we still have a couple days for the details to get ironed out from this, but if you're in Virginia, if you're in parts of North Carolina, I would pay very close attention to this, especially because these are some very large amount of snowfall. Now, do I think 2 feet of snow is going to fall in Richmond? No, probably not. But you could see a scenario where maybe 12, maybe 15 could definitely fall in there if this model were to hold out. And Another thing we need to consider is what are the temperatures going to be at this current point? Yeah, the temperatures are going to be near as this system is moving through. The temperatures are going to be in the in the mid to upper 20s right here. So that Kuchera snow ratio right there is going to definitely be a lot lower, and I would say maybe like an 8-to-1 ratio. So it's definitely going to be a lot wetter of a snow compared to what we're going to be seeing in the Midwest, mainly because of that moisture coming off the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf. But ultimately, guys, the main takeaway from this, if you're in the Midwest, you need to prepare for the storm right now. You're under a winter storm watch or a winter storm warning. You need to prepare for this right now. This is going to be a pretty powerful and a pretty bad storm. A lot of the models are agreeing it's going to be pretty strong. Let me go ahead and show you what we're looking at in the Midwest. The European wants mainly the Ozark Plateau and areas around there to get the most snowfall, mainly up to 16 inches of snow depending on where you are and where these snow bands form up. In parts of St. Louis, you're looking at like 8 to 10 inches of snow, according to the European. Kansas City, about 8. Jefferson City, Columbia, about 8 to 10 as well. So you're going to want to pay attention to this. But this also gives a lot of snow to areas in Kentucky, which, by the way, really just is still under that flash flood, all those flash flood warnings over there. So on top of just dealing with the flash flooding, now they're going to deal with potentially up to a foot of snow over there as well, according to these runs right there. I hope that does not happen. And areas in southern Illinois where they're saying that they're going to be up to a foot of snow right there, that is a lot of snow for that part of Illinois, and I want to make that very clear. I've been talking to some of my guys in Storms United who live in extreme southern Illinois, and they're telling me, hey, if you're seeing anything like this is going to be pretty historic. You're going to want to pay attention to this. So I wanted to highlight that and emphasize that very clearly. Let's go ahead and show you the GFS. The 0Z GFS went pretty haywire last night and wants 2 feet of snow for areas around Springfield, Missouri, and the Ozark Plateau. 12Z has definitely come down a little bit, but it's still very haywire for what we're seeing right here. This is still very aggressive right here, and the NAM is also agreeing with this as well, with how aggressive it's going to be. Like I said previously, the NAM is a bit more spread out, I will say, compared to the GFS, but the GFS is calling for a similar style system compared to what we were seeing with the NAM, and that scares me right there. When you see models generally in agreement with this, it's never really good. And this isn't just the Euro and the GFS agreeing. Now it's the GEM RDPS, the NAM, all of that stuff, and the HER and the RAP are getting a similar synoptic setup. This is a very concerning system if you are in the Midwest, if you are in Kentucky, if you are in Ohio, West Virginia, those areas right there. Let's go ahead and move over to the Mid-Atlantic. 12Z GFS is pretty interesting as well. They want the most of the snow to be in parts of Virginia, southern Maryland, the Delmarva Peninsula, Delaware, and New Jersey, and mainly for the snow to stay out to sea compared to what we were seeing in other runs like the European and those areas right there. This is a run I can buy, I will say. However, it's going to really depend on how it evolves once it gets to the Gulf and how it evolves as it becomes that Colorado low system. So we're going to have to see how this pans out. But by and large, you're still looking at a very, very impactful storm. And if it pans out in the way that some of these runs are thinking it will, this is going to be pretty historic for a lot of these areas. Not just because of the snowfall, but because of the impacts as well. Like, if you think about this for a second, you're looking at areas from the Great Plains all the way to the Mid-Atlantic and potentially all the way up to the northeastern United States getting potentially 8+ inches of snow. I have never seen a situation where an Alberta Clipper type system develops into a Colorado low and then develops into a nor'easter in the way that these models are advocating for. And that is why I am covering this, and that is why I'm raising the alarm, and so many people are raising the alarm, because this has the potential to be very impactful for over 100 million people. And that is why I'm covering this right now, and that is why I'm heightening up the urgency to this right now, and that's why I'm reading out the winter storm watches and warnings to warn you guys, hey, this is going to be very bad regardless of the amount of snow. You're going to want to pay attention to this. And ultimately, I think this is going to be more impactful for the Midwest than the Mid-Atlantic right now, mainly because A, we know more and we know what's going to happen over there, and B, the Mid-Atlantic is still a bit of a gray area right now, depending on the track, so we're going to have to watch that going forward. But ultimately, The key takeaways are: number one, prepare. Number two, keep yourself updated. I'll provide those updates as provided. And number three, if you get under a winter storm watch or winter storm warning, you need to take action immediately. This is going to be pretty bad. And we'll continue to update you here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us get more people engaged with weather. If you want to hang out with us at Storms United and ask us questions about how the system's going to impact you, be sure to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that will be in the end screen. Also, shout out to Daniel as an official sponsor of the Pat's Path Predictor channel. If you want to support the channel more directly, as well as the documentaries and other projects I am working on, be sure to join my Patreon. It's the first link in the description down below. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.